All right, so today we're going to do a deep dive into something that really shook up the hip-hop world.
Yeah.
A little over a year ago, remember when Kendrick's verse on that track dropped?
Oh, yeah, I remember.
It felt like the ground was shifting under our feet, you know what I mean? Like, suddenly, the idea of J. Cole and Kendrick going head-to-head, lyrically, I mean, it wasn't just a hypothetical anymore, and these are two giants, man.
Yeah.
With a history that, to be honest, always seemed more about mutual respect, maybe even some real friendship behind the scenes.
It really did. I mean, you rarely saw any public displays of animosity or anything like that.
Exactly.
It was more like this unspoken understanding, this acknowledgement of each other's talent and position in the game.
Right, and then, like, that comes along and kind of throws a wrench in the whole dynamic.
And that's what made it so captivating, right? This sense of what's going to happen next, like everybody was holding their breath, waiting to see if there would be a response.
And then so, who would step up first?
Absolutely, and you got to remember, these are artists at the very top of the food chain, carefully crafting their public image, building these incredibly loyal fan bases.
Right, it's not like they're just going to fire off a diss track without weighing the consequences, both for their careers and their reputations.
Precisely, it's a high-stakes game, and any move they make has the potential to send ripples throughout the entire industry.
And then, just 9 days after, like, that dropped, J. Cole releases 7 Minute Drill.
Boom! There it is, the first shot fired.
Part of his Might Delete Later project, which, in hindsight, is kind of a telling title, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's like he knew right from the start that this track might not have a long shelf life, that he might end up backtracking.
Yeah, and for this deep dive, we're not going to get bogged down in a line-by-line analysis of the lyrics.
Right.
Instead, we're going for a more high-level view. What can 7 Minute Drill, even in its short existence, tell us about these artists and the whole chain of events that followed?
That's exactly it. We're looking for the key insights, the hidden layers beneath the surface.
Like archaeologists, carefully brushing away the dirt to reveal the true shape of the artifact.
Perfect analogy, and I think the best place to start is with the title itself, 7 Minute Drill.
Now, longtime J. Cole fans might already know this, but for those who don't, this refers to a studio exercise he's known for.
A kind of self-imposed challenge.
Exactly. He gives himself 7 minutes to create something. Could be writing lyrics, could be producing a beat, whatever.
Yeah, it's all about pushing those creative boundaries, sharpening those skills under pressure.
And here's where it gets really fascinating, right? Because he's applying this concept, this idea of a quick, off-the-cuff creative burst to a diss track.
A diss track where his lyrical abilities, especially in the context of going toe-to-toe with Kendrick, were immediately going to be under a microscope.
Yeah, people were going to be listening with a fine-tooth comb, dissecting every rhyme, every flow.
Absolutely. So that title, 7 Minute Drill, it's layered, man. On the one hand, it projects this image of casual confidence. Like, this is nothing for me. I can whip up a response in the time it takes to make a sandwich.
Yeah, like he's not even breaking a sweat.
But on the other hand, the fact that he's referencing this studio exercise could also suggest a sense of urgency. Like, he felt the need to respond quickly, maybe even before fully considering all the possible ramifications.
Yeah, like he had to get it off his chest, put something out there before the pressure built up too much.
Right, and that initial energy, that urgency, you can feel it right from the jump. The first beat hits hard.
Oh, yeah, it's definitely got that confrontational vibe, like Cole's stepping into the ring, ready to throw down.
But then when you really start to listen to the words, to the substance of what he's actually saying,
it doesn't always line up with that initial sonic aggression.
Exactly, and what's really intriguing is how he positions himself in relation to Kendrick's discography, to Kendrick's evolution as an artist.
He starts by acknowledging Good Kid, M.A.E. City, as a classic, which, I mean, most people would agree with that assessment.
Right, it's pretty much universally praised.
But then he goes on to essentially dismiss To Pimp a Butterfly, calling it something that put people to sleep.
Whoa, hold up. To Pimp a Butterfly, the album that dealt with such complex themes, the album that had such a huge cultural impact.
Yeah, an album that a lot of people consider to be a masterpiece, and he's calling it sleepy.
That's a pretty bold statement, and it feels very deliberate, almost dismissive.
Like he's trying to downplay its significance, maybe to elevate his own work in comparison.
Right, and then he goes on to say that Damn is Kendrick's peak, which, again, you could make an argument for that. Commercially and critically, it was incredibly successful.
But then he labels Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, Kendrick's most recent album at the time, as tragic.
So if we connect the dots here, it seems like Cole is constructing a very specific narrative about Kendrick's career arc.
one that emphasizes the high points, the commercial successes, while kind of brushing aside the more experimental, the more introspective projects.
And it makes you wonder, right? How do artists, especially artists at this level, internally evaluate and then publicly frame each other's creative journeys?
It's a fascinating question, and one that we could probably spend a whole other episode unpacking.
It definitely, but getting back to 7-Minute Drill, Cole definitely doesn't shy away from asserting his own dominance.
He flat out says that he's in his prime now, directly implying that he's surpassed Kendrick, who he seems to believe has already peaked.
Yeah, there's a strong current of competitiveness running through those early lines, this sense that he's at the front of the pack and pulling away.
Like he's looking over his shoulder and seeing Kendrick fading in the rearview mirror.
But then, as the track progresses, that initial bravado starts to crack a little bit, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. The tone shifts noticeably in the second verse.
He starts talking about having mixed feelings about the whole situation.
Yeah, that initial aggression starts to give way to something that sounds more like hesitation, maybe even a little regret.
And then there's that line, "Lord, don't make me have to smoke this guy because I fuck with him."
I mean, come on, that's a huge admission to make in a diss track.
It really is. It suggests that there's this inner conflict going on, this acknowledgement of the personal relationship he has with Kendrick.
Right. It makes the whole confrontation feel less like a purely competitive thing and more like he's being pulled in different directions.
Exactly. Like he's caught between the need to respond, to defend his position, and his genuine respect for Kendrick.
And that reference to being Nino with this thing, referencing Nino Brown from New Jack City, who's forced to betray a close friend, it adds another layer to that sense of inner turmoil.
Oh, for sure. It's like he's saying, I'm in a tough spot here. I'm being forced to do something I don't really want to do.
And then there's that repeated assertion that this is just a warning shot, not a full-blown, all-out attack.
Right. Like he's trying to downplay the intensity, to preemptively frame his response as less serious than it might initially come across.
Almost like he's trying to control the narrative, to manage the potential fallout before it gets out of hand.
Exactly. And that warning shot claim, it's crucial. It could suggest that he was testing the waters, trying to gauge the reaction before fully committing to a more aggressive approach.
Yeah, like he was leaving himself an out, a way to de-escalate the situation if things started to get too heated.
And it might also have been a way to minimize any potential damage to his relationships, both within the industry and personally.
Right, because in hip-hop, especially at that level, these kinds of beefs can have real-world consequences.
Absolutely. Careers can be impacted, reputations can be tarnished. It's not just about words on a track.
And then comes the real turning point, the moment that had everyone talking. He straight up says that he respects Kendrick, and even hints at the possibility of taking the track down completely.
Now that's a move you don't see every day in the world of rap beef. To express that kind of sentiment so openly, so soon after releasing a diss.
Right, it goes against the whole grain of bravado and one-upmanship that we often see in these situations.
And what's particularly striking is the timing and the transparency. To publicly acknowledge your respect for the person you just targeted, and to openly contemplate pulling the song just days after its release.
It's a pretty significant departure from the usual script.
It really is. And it raises some interesting questions about Cole's motivations, about what he was hoping to achieve with this track.
Which brings us to the immediate aftermath. Just a few days later, at his own Dreamville festival, Cole gets on stage and apologizes for the song.
Calls it lame and goofy, even expresses regret for potentially diminishing Kendrick's artistry.
And then, true to his word, the track disappears from all streaming platforms.
Gone, just like that.
So let's zoom out for a second and look at the bigger picture here. Cole was the first to respond in this potential clash of titans, and then he almost immediately retreats.
It's a pretty unexpected turn of events, and it forces us to re-examine some of the assumptions we might have had about his mindset.
He'd been very vocal in the past about being at the top of his game, even entertaining the idea of being the greatest.
Right. But this whole episode suggests a possible disconnect between that outward projection of confidence and his inner comfort level with actually engaging in this kind of direct conflict.
Especially with an artist like Kendrick, who he clearly holds in high regard.
Yeah, it throws a wrench into the whole narrative of him being this unflinching, unstoppable force.
The fact that he felt compelled to apologize so quickly, to essentially erase the song, it makes you wonder about the depth of those earlier claims, or at least his willingness to back them up in a real confrontation.
And while there were definitely rumors circulating about external pressure, maybe from people in the industry, maybe even from Kendrick's camp, Cole's explanation at Dreamville seemed to come from a genuine place of discomfort with the whole situation.
Like he realized he'd crossed a line and he needed to course correct.
Exactly. It suggests a value system that prioritizes respect and personal relationships, even within the often cutthroat world of hip-hop.
Which, in a way, makes him even more intriguing as an artist, right? Because he's not just playing a role, he's allowing himself to be vulnerable, to show his doubts and his regrets.
Absolutely. It adds a layer of complexity, of humanity that you don't always see in artists who operate at that level of fame and success.
And the impact of 7 Minute Drill, even though it was short-lived, it's undeniable. It was the initial spark that ignited this whole saga, even if Cole himself tried to quickly put out the flames.
It was a significant moment, however brief, in the ongoing drama between Drake and Kendrick, pulling Cole into the center of that storm for a short but intense period.
And then, just as quickly, he steps back, leaving the main narrative to play out between the other two.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, here's a final thought to chew on. How does this whole episode, this brief foray into direct conflict and subsequent retreat, ultimately shape your view of J. Cole as an artist?
Does this choice of authenticity, even if some might interpret it as a step back, hold more weight, more lasting significance than the pursuit of competitive dominance?
It's a question worth pondering for sure, and one that speaks to the broader themes of integrity, humility, and the complexities of navigating relationships within the often high-stakes world of hip-hop.
And with that, we'll leave you to your own reflections.